October 15th, 2024. Welcome to all of our councillors. We have 5 in the room. Councillor Waxer joining us on the Zoom platform. Welcome to staff in the room and those members of the public who have joined us today in the forum. And welcome also to those watching live on our Zoom platform and those who will watch later on our YouTube channel. Councillors, we have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Mr. Given.
Your worship, administration would like to request an additional item. I'd recommend 6.4 and Foodbank Location.
Thank you for that proposed amendment. Are there any other changes to be made to the agenda? Seeing nothing, might have the councillor perhaps make a motion to amend the agenda with the addition of item 6.4, Jasper Foodbank Location. Councillor Keller-Granty, thank you for that. Is there any debate? Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. And may I have a motion then to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended? Councillor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have before us the minutes of the regular meeting of October 8th. For approval, are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, might I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the October 8th, 2024 regular council meeting as presented? Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. We have no delegations registered. We have no delegations registered today, but we typically take time at this portion of the agenda to invite members of the gallery to address any matter which is already on the agenda. I don't see anybody rising to do that, so I will assume that's not going to happen, which takes us to agenda item 5, correspondence, of which we have none for consideration, which takes us to agenda item 6, new business, to begin with the Joint Recovery Coordination Center update. Item 6.1. And Director Park, welcome for your first in-person attendance, I think at our council chambers in the forum, and new to many members of council, but not all of them.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, members of council. I'm very happy to be here in person today, and I think this is a positive sign of Jasper's ongoing recovery efforts. So we're able to be here all together in person. So my purpose for appearing before you this morning is to provide you a bit of an update on where things are at on the JRCC. And first and foremost, introduce to you what you've seen in your agenda package, which is what we are proposing to be our weekly reporting format. So this is our first stab at it. There will be some further refinements and work that will need to come along as we move forward. But the intention would be to essentially have a weekly reporting format that we were able to provide to both council, but also to Parks Canada and our partners at the GOA. So there's an ongoing update of the progress of recovery to all of the relevant stakeholders. The first slide includes the current JRCC objectives. Council has, of course, seen these previously, and these also will be updated on an ongoing basis. As some of these are essentially completed and then new objectives are identified and brought forward. And then under these objectives, there will be a series of sub-objectives. And then further into the report, you will see that I'll be going to a highlights section. So a highlight for this particular week, as the GOA has approved the JRCC moving into the provincial building. We are currently targeting a move-in date of mid-November, which will be positive. We are working in cooperation with, of course, the GOA and the current tenants there at the employment center to manage that transition. And the other positive news is that the DRP funding request from the GOA has also been approved. And we are expecting to receive our first advance of those monies this week, which will be helpful as we have invoices that are coming in that need to be paid. Following on that, we have some updates from our partners at Parks, the Malign Lake Road. Did I pronounce that correctly this time?
Typically, we would say Malin.
Malign Lake Road. My apologies. It was the last time I get that wrong. The backcountry areas are also being opened up, and Celestine Road. And then we have updates essentially by sort of major department or area of works, communications and information. So last week we had the tour with the minister, the federal minister. We also had a media tour with CBS. And a number of announcements made by the minister, and that visit was generally considered to be quite successful. That visit was really quite a success. Upcoming, we have the communications release surrounding debris removal. Some of that information was released on Friday, as the Mayor and Council is aware, including some updated pricing on what the demolition debris removal is expected to cost. And we are continuing to support the rebuild guide communications coming later this month. On the social services side of things, so the social recovery working group has now been stood up and is in the chartering process. Community outreach services, of course, as part of business continuity, has been continuing their work on social outreach. Health Canada remains on site for all JRCC and field unit staff and providing support there. And of course, the Jasper Activity Center opened up for the public last week, which is good news. On the both temporary and interim housing accommodation issue. So all essential workers essentially, it's been communicated to them now that there will be support for essential worker housing past the previous November 30th established deadline. We are working with our partners at the GOA and Parks Canada to determine there will most likely be a cost recovery component of that past November 30th. So up until now, the full cost of accommodation has been paid. But past November 30th, we will be able to recover some component of that cost through rents, which would be considered normal rents in Jasper for that period of time. The exact numbers on that we are still working with our partners to determine, and that will be coming forward in the coming weeks. We are still continuing with our work on the interim housing. So this is one of the major issues we wanted to bring to council's attention today. You can expect to see, starting today, actual shovels in the ground. So the mobilization of the contractors for the site servicing will be starting today on two different areas of work. So one area, which is in the northeast corner of the community, which we are quickly calling the RCMP site, because it's adjacent to the planned RCMP development. So there are two parcels of land there. We will start the servicing work on them today. And then in addition to that, we have the two sites along Connaught Drive on what we consider the southwest end of town. And the site servicing work will begin on those parcels as well today. There's a map further down that I will, and I'll look to Emma, maybe perhaps we could have the map put up for council. It is perfect. Thank you. So again, the northeast corner are the two lots, on the southwest corner are the two lots, and then the final location is what is called Site 2B, which is on the south side of the highway. Work on that one will come at a slightly later stage. There's some additional permitting requirements we have to work through with Parks Canada before we be able to move forward on that. But the site servicing will begin, so we want to make council aware and the community aware that they will start to see work on those sites already. We are still waiting for a formal announcement of what the interim housing program will look like from the GOA. But we are expecting that announcement will come shortly. But we do have their agreement and their approval to be moving forward with the site servicing work so that work is not held up while we can wait for the further announcements. There will be a requirement for a 30-day advertisement period for site 2B. So this is part of the impact assessment work that Parks Canada will have to do. So that site will be advertised and the community will have the opportunity to provide input on that. And that process will be, that advertising will be starting, I believe, this week. That's pretty much the update from my side. Happy to answer any questions the council might have based on the report that we have in the agenda or the map or any other things recovery related.
Thank you, Director Clark. I will turn it to councillors for questions, beginning with Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for that. Sorry, just a clarification question that, from my understanding, what does advertising for 2B entail? What are we advertising for? Is it the work that needs to be done there or?
So Parks Canada regulation requires a public consultation period for the use of public lands. And that is a 30-day notice period or window for collecting that public feedback. So specifically because that land will be used for a purpose that was not previously used, that is a requirement. They must move forward.
Gotcha. And then to follow up, then all other parcels that we've kind of identified have already been identified in the past as housing reserve.
Have already been consulted on by Parks Canada for future development within the community. So those requirements have been met, but for site 2B they have not met. And that's why there's a difference between the notice period.
Great. Okay. And then one last question, and then the same train of thought is, have we decided like, what would be, is the proposal to have interim housing on all 5 of these parcels, or is there, you know, a initial one that we're going to be using and then filling in as kind of the need rises or kind of? So
we are still waiting for confirmation from the province in terms of what the interim housing program exactly is going to look like, the number of units. And the province is going to be leading the procurement on those units. And so we don't have the details of what the exact sizing and configuration of what the interim housing units are going to look like just yet. However, we do have a basic understanding of density. We are targeting essentially 40 units per hectare of density on the land that we have available to us. And using that in a rough calculation of what we expect to be the total interim housing program, we anticipate we will need all of these sites. We are going to prioritize these sites within the municipal boundary first, and certainly those sites will be prioritized for larger units, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units that will be suitable for families. Those will be prioritized within the municipal footprint. Site 2B will be prioritized for single-bedroom units, until we have the exact details of the program, we won't be able to have certainty in terms of exactly how much of all of this land we will need. We fully expect that all the parcels within town, at the very least, will be needed, and a significant portion of site 2B as well, based on our early projections.
Thank you for that. Other questions? Deputy Mayor Gordon?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good to see you in person, sir. Through you, your worship, to Mr. Park, if I may, and accept my ignorance on this question, but, just expanding on what Councillor Wilson was asking, has that 30-day process for 2B started in Parks Canada yet? If not, then do we have an expected start date, and when would that 30-day period be for what we expect?
So we're anticipating the 30-day notice period will start this week. The exact date and timing, we're still working through the details of that with Parks. So it would be essentially complete by mid-November. And based on how we are planning to stage the servicing work, so the servicing work will start, if you refer back to your map, the first priority will be parcels HH and HF, which are on that northeast corner. And then parcels GA and HK, which are in the southwest one. So we have contractors mobilized and they will begin to work on those parcels first. And when that work is complete, then contractors will be repositioned to focus on 2B. And we do anticipate they will need at least 4 weeks to complete the servicing on those first parcels first. So the timing actually coincides well. And so there will be no delay incurred as a result of the notice, the requirement for the notice period.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Caliban.
Thank you, Aaron, to start, the area down by where the RCMP station, these are 2 additional lots beside the RCMP station, so we won't be affecting the RCMP station, am I correct?
That is correct. So the RCMP have determined they had an existing project already planned and they are moving forward with that. So we are using the adjacent properties to that first.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and nice to see you, Person Director Park. My question is, do you know how many residents or families we will be able to house?
I cannot confirm that number until we have a formal announcement from our partners behind it.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, through you to Director Fark. I just wanted to express pleasure to hear that you have now space to operate out of the provincial building. And I was curious, do you have the entire 2nd floor or just part of it?
So we will be occupying the entire 2nd floor. However, some of the space will be shared space with the employment center. So the large room, which is called the classroom currently, that will be a bookable space that we would be sharing then with our colleagues at the employment center. But yes, the intent would be to occupy the 2nd floor.
That's wonderful news. Thank you.
Councillor Melvin.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Director Park, thank you for the report. I just want to clarify a short page 8 of our agenda. We talked about a CBS media interviews and tour. Acronyms are great. Canadian Broadcast Syndicate, or what does CBS stand for?
That's a very good question. I believe it is actually not Canadian. I believe it is the US CBS.
So it is the US
Yes.
channel. Okay,
Yes.
I was wondering if that should have been CBC or.
No, I don't know if there's anything other than CBS, so I'm not sure what the acronym stands for. I apologize.
Okay, I did figure out one of the other acronyms during the meeting here. But on page 10, in the next steps, if you could help explain the next steps, the long-term contracts with hotels to provide interim housing 50% complete. And at 50% complete, is that going to be the maximum? Or will there be a higher completion rate? And when we talk about the interim housing, what period of time would that be covering?
So, again, language is important. So the temporary housing is what is being housed in the visitor accommodation. And we speak of that as being 50% complete, as in we are working with the hotel industry to get contracts in place to extend the temporary accommodation from November 30th until February 28th. So we're halfway through completing that contracting process with the hotels, is what that is meant to indicate, right? So that is providing that transitional housing for essential workers in the visitor accommodation from essentially December 1st until February 28th, while we wait until the interim housing is in place. Based on our current timelines, we're targeting occupancy, the first occupancy in the interim housing in January or February of next year is the timeline that we're looking at. And that housing is meant to last for a period of 3 to 5 years, depending on how the other recovery initiatives develop.
Thank you, which then prompts the process, which this may be premature, but the process to get into the housing that we're currently talking about to be placed on those various sites. Have we developed a process or is there a criteria already predetermined how people will be able to access those sites?
Yes, so there are two components of that. The first component is what we're calling the prioritization component. So we, as the MOJ, as you are aware, we did a housing application where displaced residents were able to apply for housing. And we have received approximately 580 unique housing applications. So those people are within our system. And we will go through a process depending on how many units are available of prioritizing people based on certain criteria that we are working also to develop with our partners in the GOA. Around, the move in for those on that list. We anticipate that of those 580, a significant number will have found other solutions by the time the interim housing becomes available. However, we are certain that whatever housing we are able to provide, there will be more than enough demand to fill it. The demand will still exceed the supply. So there's a prioritization process. General criteria, so the essential workers will be given first priority. The next category will be ordinary resident in Jasper, employed, families, school-age children, and need to be in the schools. Those types of criteria will be applied for the prioritization of the housing. The second component of that is then the property management system. So we anticipate having a significant number of units to manage. That includes everything from the leasing agreements and the rent recovery to the building maintenance and administration of the building. It's a large, considerably large volume of work. And we are exploring two options there. So one option is to go out to the market and do a procurement for property management services and see if we can essentially hire a contract property manager to manage the property. The second option that we are investigating is, both the municipality of Jasper and Parks Canada have some in-house property management capacity. In the MOJ side, it is limited. On the Parks Canada side, it's slightly more robust, but there is some existing capacity there. And we could look at what it would take to scale up that capacity in order to be able to take on that work. So we will explore both options, and there is a process in place to explore those options that we are working through currently.
And if I may, one last opportunity on page 14, there's a reference at the bottom. This is regarding remediation of impacted Parks Canada and MOJ infrastructure. And towards the bottom, we talk about upcoming situations there. And the remainder of the DTF and DTA locations, those two acronyms I can't figure out.
Okay, I apologize. Also, this report is intended for both us and for Parks, and this is Parks vernacular. So DTF and DTA stand for danger tree falling and danger tree assessment.
And that will then help to continue to open up other Parks Canada sites for visitation as we get through the winter and into next summer.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mel. I'll go first to Councillor Hall and back to you, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my question was actually answered. Cover your question regarding how many people apply for housing. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. Introduce Mr. Park. How many people currently do we have housed at the hotels?
So you will see that information on page 10. So we have a total of 148 bookings currently, of which there are 122 people in-house and 26 future bookings. So we have some people who are coming back and forth in support of the recovery effort, so they're not always necessarily in place. So those are the 26 future bookings. So 122 is the current number. And then on that slide, there's a further breakdown between, who are from the MOJ side and who are from the park side.
Thank you.
Director Park, I have an observation, well, two observations and then a couple of questions. Firstly, I want to do this gently, but it is, from my perspective at least, important, particularly if we are going to see these reports weekly, which I hope we do, because it's a great way to communicate with the public. There is a sensitivity around the term essential workers. And it appears 7 times in this report and has been mentioned many times during this presentation. As recently as this weekend, I read an article on CPC, again, with a resident expressing a sense of diminishment because that resident wasn't qualified as an essential worker and yet thinks that, and arguably are, important to the community. So I'm wondering whether, if this is going to be a continuing thing, we could look at adopting wording that respects that sensitivity. And it's cumbersome, I know, I'm thinking like workers providing essential services is what we actually mean, and we are constrained by government of Alberta funding that says they will fund housing for essential workers. But I just invite staff to look at a more sensitive way to express that to the community. My questions are these, on the highlights page, you've identified that the DRP funding request has been approved. Is that the second request or the first request?
So that is based on the updated project list that we submitted, with the dollar value that was attached with that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Under communications and information, you have highlighted the communications that went out on Friday regarding debris removal, which was eagerly awaited and very much appreciated. Thank you for getting that out. My understanding, and you might have read it there or elsewhere, but about 42% of leaseholders have provided the authorization for work to happen on their properties.
That's correct.
Just for public information, is there a threshold that is required before the debris removal can begin? Is it 100%, or can there be some laggards and we can still move forward?
Yeah, so it doesn't require 100%, but we are working by zones. So we've identified 37 zones within the affected areas that need to be remediated. And the idea is that we need the critical mass within each zone in order to be able to start within that zone. We're not surprised there has not been a big change over the weekend, because of the Thanksgiving weekend. We expect now with pricing information being out and available, this should dispel a lot of the sort of rumor and misinformation that was out there around what the costing is going to be. People can now see and clearly understand what that's going to be. So we are optimistic that the community will see this information, and then we will get a significant increase in the number of people signing the required documentation to allow that work to start. But yes, we don't require 100%. We do require the critical mass within each zone.
And so everyone can contribute to achieving that critical mass by getting their approval in now.
That's correct.
Yes, thank you for that. I'll save my other observation for another day. Councillor Wilson.
Sir, yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to jump in there regarding the zones. My question was about debris removal. I have a couple actually that I just hope to get answered. Will the JRCC or Elliston be providing a list of zones and a forecasted timeline on those zones? So like if there was 37, okay, we're gonna start at this one, you know, and I know we're not there yet because you have to have the buy-in from the public, but and then, yeah, just like a bit of a schedule on when residents would expect to have activity in their area.
Yes, so there will be all the details on staging and phasing, and the order of the zones will become available as we have that information based on, of course, the return from the public of the required authorizations.
Okay, and then the follow-up question was about debris removal as well. We are kind of pushing into the winter now. Do you forecast any hangups, abating, cleanup, being able to follow the guidelines on safe work procedures throughout the winter?
No, the expectation is the work to proceed comfortably through the winter. There are some additional constraints or costs around the dust suppression essentially, which requires, of course, a wetting process. So it will depend on the amount of precipitation that we receive and the ground conditions. But for the most part, it is very capable to move forward throughout the winter.
And yeah, if I may, this is a totally off topic, but I think it falls within recovery and you're here in front of us today, and at least just get it out there. It might just be to Bill as well. But it was brought to my attention that our municipal fire department has not had any type of debrief in the wake of fire, and just hoping that there could be some planning for, you know, something for our local members. I know there's going to probably be a larger scale debrief or you know, I guess I don't know if that's the proper terms, but
Your worship, that's probably more MOJ standard. We're trying to figure out how to differentiate between GRCC and sort of business continuity or sort of regular municipal operations. But this certainly would fall in the regular municipal operations. I know Director Nadon and Chief Conte have been devising, having a discussion about what approach they'd like to take to do that debrief. I think that there's a couple different levels. First, there's the psychological supports, which the municipality has been working to offer all employees, and I believe that I'll check to confirm. But my intention certainly would be that our brigade members would have opportunity to access that, although they're not strictly speaking employees, which is a bit of a challenge. So we want to ensure that they have those psychological supports that the municipality has worked to arrange. In terms of the operational debrief and the after action report, we're discussing how we can do that both from the sort of frontline level as well as through the systems level, because we really, obviously, given the complexity of the operation between sort of three orders of government through the incident, we see a need to have a more coordinated approach to doing that debrief. So there's those different levels of, okay, so what happened on the ground from a firefighter perspective? And Christine and Matt are discussing how they would implement that. And then we're also having discussion about how we could debrief and do an after action report from the Municipality Parks Canada Government of Alberta perspective. And I've raised this with the Assistant Deputy Minister of Alberta Emergency Management to identify whether there might be a grant or some financial support, because I think we need external resources to be able to coordinate all three parties into that review. So we are actively discussing how to do that. I can come back to council with some additional details about what's happening, certainly on the front line level.
yeah, in my opinion, I guess as well, though, we're months past the fire now, time is of the essence regarding, you know, any type of like, detail, of, you know, what happened, leading up to the fire, post-fire and that kind of thing. So they, you know, the municipality side, I think, let's get that done sooner rather than later, the joint, and after, sorry, what were the words? After action? Yeah. You know, again, that's gonna take a little bit more time, but if we can get kind of our team together, I think, because there's definitely a lot of trauma there as well.
But your worship, message received, absolutely. And an after action report is more of a technical briefing about sort of what happened. And I think there's, so I want to make a distinction between supporting our members with psychological supports, which would be a different activity and effort than doing an after action report about the technical, how did the firefighting go? And both of those are important. And certainly the point taken that we want to ensure that that's happening as quickly as possible. Certainly that's PC.
If there are no further questions, I will thank you again, Director Clark. Hopefully we will see you here future weeks, although I know that you are and your team remains very busy with all of this. But thank you for today's update and for all the work that has brought us to this point.
Thank you very much.
Councillors, might I have a motion to receive Director Clark's presentation for information? Councillor Waxer? That is Councillor Waxer's motion, as I take the hand signals. If there is no debate, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed, that is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, Community and Economic Development Fund policy review. Director Reed.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. So Lisa Riddell is online and she'll walk us through this item, but she's been doing the heavy lifting to bring this sort of modernization, given our new conditions here from this item. So I'll hand it over to Ms. Riddell.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm zooming in and I do apologize, the sound on my end, I'm having a hard time hearing those of you in the room. But in front of you, there's a report on the Community and Economic Development Fund policy review, and I will summarize. The recommendation from administration is to update the policy as recommended. And for some background, the policy was approved roughly 2 years ago, and it provides, the CED fund provides support to projects that help advance either community or economic development initiatives within the town. It's been in place for 2 years and we've gone through 3 intakes, and every time it's oversubscribed, meaning there are far more applicants and creative ideas than funds available to make all of that happen. So after the fire impacted Jasper in July 2024, the impact is complex, and the social and economic recovery will be complex as well. We are working closely with several external funders, including but not limited to Jasper Community Team Society, the Canadian Red Cross, and the Banff Canmore Foundation, all organizations that have raised a tremendous amount of funding intended to support Jasperites. So the above noted organizations are dispersing funding directly to individuals and families through an agreement with municipalities' community outreach services. This has allowed rapid response to the recovery to individuals and families, but the conversation has also turned to how they can be supporting organizations and just community groups that have ideas on initiatives, events, programs, or services that will support recovery in Jasper. When we look at using a strength-based approach, the municipality's Community and Economic Development Fund has worked really well for 3 funding cycles and provides a bit of a foundational system on which we can build and expand in our response to this disaster. So thinking about the strengths and the systems we've already built in town, the most effective and community-focused social and economic recovery efforts will need to grow to the life, character, and strengths of the community those efforts are intended to serve. Jasperites, we've seen, are very active, creative, and engaged in supporting their own recovery. In the first month of community conversations, more than 25 agencies, organizations, and individuals shared countless ideas that could help with recovery. The CED Fund is an established system through which relief and recovery funding can flow through to organizations, businesses, and individuals, those who have the scope, capacity, and passion to undertake these initiatives and help boost resilience and recovery in our community. We're already seeing several examples of that. For example, at the Legion, the dinners, the meals they were providing upon re-entry, Pursuit doing a community dinner, TGP wants to do a community dinner. Jasperites know the types of things that are going to bring people together and improve well-being. Also the thrift stores that are popping up all over the place. So we've done a review of the policy with the above in mind, and we've proposed changes that would build upon an existing system the community knows and recognizes that is working, and just allow it to be a little bit more responsive to the needs of the community now, and just set the system up to be able to flow that recovery and relief funding through. So administration is recommending that all applications be reviewed and approved by community development, with regular reporting being provided to council. An alternative would include including an elected official in the CED Fund selection committee. This could take the form of appointing a single member of council. However, administration's not recommending this approach. Just ensuring equity among council members is a key consideration, and the inclusion of elected officials could potentially lead to perceived or actual imbalances. Allowing administration to handle the review process and provide monthly reports to council, ensures a more efficient and timely handling of funding requests. In conclusion, updating the policy as recommended will enhance the fund's ability to support Jasper's recovery and future resilience efforts. And by maintaining an administratively led process, the municipality ensures timely decision-making and avoids the delays that could be associated with a formal process within council. Regular reporting will provide transparency and oversight without compromising efficiency. The revisions do build on just an effective system, using our strengths and widening it just a little bit to be able to be responsive to what we are looking at now. Strategic relevance, there's lots of strategic relevance, and financial, it is important, I think, to note that the budget to amend this policy and administrative processes within our existing budget, and that making these changes wouldn't result in an increase in funding request in the 2025 proposed operating budget. I'm available for questions, but I do feel like I want to preface by saying I can't hear very well in the room, so I may ask either that the question be put in the chat or that perhaps Director Reed can help me answer some questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Riddell, for that report. I hope you can hear this. Most of us in the room, perhaps all of us, are not on the Zoom platform, so we don't have access to the chat. But Mr. Given says that he can accommodate, so it might be a little bit challenging, but we'll work through that. Thank you for the presentation. I will turn it to councillors for questions they may have. Councillor Melvin.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have this policy in front of us, and we have an annual expenditure of $10,000. Are we talking about funds over and above $10,000 at this point?
I apologize. I didn't hear that question, but I could hear Mayor Ireland pretty well if you wouldn't mind repeating.
Question from Councillor Melnick is that the policy currently deals with $10,000 of distributable funds annually. Are we talking about more than that amount?
Your Worship, I can speak to this certainly through to Councillor Melnick. So yes, I mean, the short answer is absolutely yes. And the policy is flexible enough that should council wish to change their amount, either higher or lower, the policy would then be able to accommodate that as well. But we are directly working with external funders who want to bring these levels of support to our community. And so this policy would, as Ms. Riddell said, an already effective vehicle to do that. And we would just be expanding its sort of operational overview or ability to cover more ground with more funding.
Deputy Mayor Demoto.
For Steve Baird, Your Worship, through you, to administration, just for clarity, this has does this have a connection to the Caring Community Fund that where all the fundraising money went to for during the wildfire fundraising?
So Your Worship, through to Councillor Demota, yes, directly, that's the Jasper Community Team reference. So the funding that they have raised would be eligible to be part of this enhanced policy, yes. If I may supplement, the Jasper Community Team's fundraising, as well as the Banff Canmore Foundation, as well as Red Cross, as well as should any other funder wish to, and I can think of several local funders that may wish to participate in this fashion, because again, it's a vehicle that's already sort of tried and tested. We know how to make this work, and we can make it quickly get the funding to the projects.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor, and to you, to Director Reid. So if I'm understanding this correctly, funders would submit money to the Economic Development Fund, and your team would look at applications through the criteria of the Economic Development Fund and disperse it that way. Do I have the correct understanding, so that basically we're opening up this policy, it's 10,000 belong to taxpayer, but if a donor came and said, here's 50,000, then you're going to use that criteria to disperse the funds to release them. Am I understanding this correctly?
Your worship, Councillor Keller, that's exactly correct. With the addition of the funder would participate in how their funds would get allocated. So the system allows, or the policy as we're proposing it, would allow then a funder to say, I have X amount of dollars, I would like it to go to worthy initiatives in the community. The existing robust system of identifying where to best do that exists through this policy and our, our community development department, and the work that we do with the community team. And so all of what you said is correct. And in a broader sense, it will be the organization gets to contribute where they feel best aligned to contribute.
Thank you.
Director Reid, maybe we've lost Ms. Riddell, but you seem well versed. I have some questions about process. I'm supportive of the notion. Would there be any limits? So some of the external funders may have dollar amounts much larger than we have ever seen in the Community and Economic Development Fund. This policy is without any limit. Are there proposed limits for, particularly now that we've also included not just organizations, but individuals and businesses? Are there any monetary limits suggested?
Your worship, the monetary limits would be by funder in essence. And so in the same way the municipality has given an envelope of funding, that indicates what level of project we can support. If a funder comes with a much larger amount, that funder would then determine their controls on size of project, if they wanted to do 10 small or 1 large, based on how that would align with our policy and how they dovetail in with their organization.
In terms of applicants, the wording in the proposed changes to the policy has not kept pace with the policy statement. So the policy statement adds individuals and businesses to what used to be organizations, but the applicants is still focused only on organizations. And I have some questions even about that, but is the intent that individuals who are applicants or individuals who are businesses fall under those same constraints, even though it says only organizations? Or would there be different considerations, particularly for business? Because I think it could become very sensitive for the municipality to be distributing funds to individual businesses, even though an external funder might think that's a proper use of those funds, but to channel it through the Municipal Community and Economic Development Fund, I think could present some real challenges, and yet there's nothing here that identifies any difference between an organization, a business, and an individual.
Your worship, great question, and much of that clarity comes in the application process itself. And the organization that is funding gets, that sit at the table, if you will, that funding table that will determine the projects that are successful. So their mission vision has to align with the projects that get proposed, as does the policy needs to align. So I do think you make a very valid point about ensuring that we get the language right in who's eligible. So we can amend that as you may recommend. But the idea that an economic development initiative, which may seem, I can see that there could be conflict there for sure, and the process will have to cover that. And in a sense, what we would do is ones that would be contentious like that would likely get the screening at this table rather than us taking that one on, right?
Your worship, the only other thing that I'd add to some of my Director Reed's response was that businesses weren't previously excluded. So council will remember that in a previous review of this, council essentially really broadened the availability. There was initially a requirement that they were not for profit. It was a fairly narrow scope. So there's actually no change to who could apply here. I think we just have specified a little bit more, but businesses previously could have applied to the community economic development fund. So that's not actually a change to what's being proposed here.
See, Director Reed is busy taking notes, so I will give him a moment. On the top of the second page of the request for decision, there is a removed third bullet point. And I appreciate that faith-based organizations have opened up thrift shops and so forth, but I can't follow the logic in removing the constraint that we previously had, that faith-based organizations are entitled to funding so long as it's not a requirement that the recipient of the funds become adherents to that particular faith. I'm curious as to why that bullet point would be removed. I'm fully in support of continuing to support a thrift shop at any church, but it's got to be open to everybody in the public, not restricted. And that seems to remove that constraint. I wonder why.
Your worship, another excellent question. This, in line with our equity, diversity, and inclusion policy, the idea that how people build community is what we need to support right now. And so should a faith-based organization want to hold a very specific to their faith event, that may not attract those who aren't part of that faith, but that event itself could be very valuable to the members of that community and their recovery within the broader community. And so, yes, we specifically did say we want to be open to faith-based organizations bringing proposals forward that will benefit the recovery of the community. And when I say recovery, I don't necessarily just mean from this event. This event prompted what I like to call the modernization of this policy to bring us more tools, should those tools be necessary today and into the future. But for right now, specifically, the idea of a multicultural night, absolutely we would support that. The idea of a specific faith-based event, we would also want to see that growth in the specific community, which then grows the broader community along with it. And I hope that helps with that. It is still going to be the same level of policy scrutiny, so we would not necessarily be supporting their weekly meetings for their faith-based sort of weekly updates, if you will, but we would want to support those events that build community.
Thank you for that. My last question, and I will turn to Deputy Mayor Delory. The last sentence under project eligibility gives more favorable consideration to groups that have they've received other funding. is that a necessary item to continue in these circumstances? So as we're trying to broaden the number of recipients, should we not give everybody an open slate? There will be some that have no opportunity to get money from anywhere else. And yet under this, they would be relatively disadvantaged, it seems to me, because they can't show additional funding sources or gifts in kind from any other group. These could be standalone startup initiatives. And I wonder whether it's necessary to have that boost given to some and not to others.
I'm being led to believe that perhaps Lisa wants to weigh in, and I know that sometimes I answer real quickly. So yes, her hand is up. Let's go to Ms. Riddell.
Thanks for the question, Mayor Ireland, and through to all of council. In that area, what we do is in the administrative process, we ask people if they have other funding or if they're able to sustain the project. And so the two kind of go together. For example, if a group has applied to replace, let's say, a freezer that they lost, and they need this freezer to keep operating, they can indicate that, you know, then they are also willing to keep to maintain the freezer or to upkeep the, you know, the infrastructure that the project or that the funding from the CED fund has originally purchased. So it's just a way for us to see about sustainability. But certainly to your point, it doesn't preclude someone from being able to receive funding. We make that quite clear in the application process that while it shows some strength to have other funding sources around sustainability, it's certainly not an all or nothing situation.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor DeBoer.
Yeah, I think my line of question is based a little closer to the Caring Community Fund and the money that's been funded there. I think we're up around $1.5 million, or we were at one point, I don't know how much dispersed daily. But would community development as a department have the ability through this, or do we just another avenue to help support, facilitate, and maybe enhance community dinners, whether they be once a week or increase those? I think from my perspective, and that's my perspective only, that being part of some of that, those fundraisers and encouraging that fundraising to that specific area, I think that providing food for people in the community is an important thing. And I think, you know, some of the mentality into those donations are to support feeding people, let alone helping get roofs over their heads or other supplies that they need. So I'm just wondering if there's an avenue or an ability for us to do that here through this, or is that part of the intention?
Your worship, I'll jump in and say that certainly would be possible. I just want to make sure that we're keeping the focus on the policy versus what could be done with the policy. So if a group came forward and said, we would like to fund additional community dinners, can you help us find partner organizations to actually, you know, we have money to do more community dinners. We need to find partners to deliver the community dinners, right? This policy would enable that. Does this policy specify only doing community dinners, or does it specify like? So again, this policy is flexible enough to be able to support that if that was either A, a funder's desire, or B, a community group who wanted to get involved in that. And they would be able to do so. So there's nothing that would prevent that. This policy does not change the nature of the relationship between the Chapter Community Team Society and the municipality. They continue to offer the Caring Community Fund through costs as they always have, which is a very separate sort of initiative that is needs-based, focused on individuals. This would allow the JCTS or any other funder, essentially would provide a new vehicle to get funding into Jasper in a way that would reduce or eliminate the need for them to start up a whole new funding mechanism and create a whole new stream that the public would have to try to understand. Where do I go to find funding? Oh, there's some here, there's some there, and that may still exist. The intention here, though, is to enable funders that have dollars that would like to see to go to work in Jasper, to use this pre-existing sort of system to do that. So, for Councillor DeMore's question, community dinners could be an initiative that somebody might bring forward. This fund with this or this approach would enable that. And administration could work with any organizations that want to do it, that isn't exclusive to that by any means.
And if I could only jump in to supplement, the idea that, remembering too, that all of our community work that we do, community conversations, all of the work with our partners informs what, sort of open opportunities are, where the best spends can be. We get all that data too, and so to your point, this specific case of feed people, we know, we have the data that says, yes, that is a viable and a good opportunity to take advantage of. And then we find a funder and a group that's going to work with us, and it's all sort of very smooth and streamlined and robust and efficient and all those good words that we want to see when we're changing the equation in our community.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question because I got more information than, I anticipated, but things that I did for myself, but I think it was beneficial for people that are listening and maybe other counselors. So thank you very much for that.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Through you to Director Reid or Lisa Riddell. I was a little bit concerned in the policy regarding the term, the Community and Economic Development Fund Selection Committee, but there is no definition of who and what would form that committee. Would the intent be to have the external funding people on that committee, or is it the fund committee as it sat before, and who would be on that committee?
I don't see Ms. Riddell's hand up, so, your worship through to, oh, there it is. I'll hand over to Ms. Riddell.
Oh, thank you. My apologies. I can actually hear Councillor Waxer pretty well on Zoom. Thanks for the question. So the idea was at the policy level to leave it open as we can, to be as nimble as we can, depending who is funding this. So for example, if we have some of those organizations that we've listed that we're working with that choose to fund the Community and Economic Development Fund, and per their donors, they wish to have somebody on the selection committee, then we would go that route. If they feel they don't need to, then it would be community development. But community development would essentially lead that and be responsive to whoever needs to have a say, depending on whoever's providing the money.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Wax, for bringing up the point I was going to bring up. I did look in the definitions for who is the CED Fund Selection Committee. And the reason I was looking for that is that in that same paragraph, there's a recommendation to specifically exclude councillors from being on that committee. But council will review the distribution of funds, and I guess with that review, bless that those funds were distributed. It seems an odd kind of way for council to be involved in a decision. We're being told not to be involved in the decision process. Outside funders can come in and make recommendations. We don't know specifically who the fund selection committee is, but we want you to bless the fact that the funds are going to be distributed. And if I've got that incorrect, please correct me along the way.
Your worship, I can speak to that for Councillor Malik. I don't think wouldn't say you have it incorrect, Councilor Melnick, but maybe just a little bit more clarity. So the fund selection committee would be administrative. And administration is proposing to report to council on a regular basis about funds that are going out the door. So there's no need for council approval. You're acting at the policy level here, and approving the policy. If the policy, meets council's desires or expectations, if you're comfortable with that, then we could move forward in that approach. As Mr. Dell said, the suggestion there for administrative approval of the funds is for two reasons. One, expediency, to ensure that we can turn things around quickly. So even with council acting on a weekly basis, which I think following the organizational meeting is likely to change back to committee and then council. As you all know, the process to get formal council approval means that a report needs to be written, that it needs to be published on a Friday. In order for it to be written and published on a Friday, somebody needs to be writing that week before, so there'd be a longer delay. If we're following, and bringing things to council. The other reason is, if we were going to have elected officials as part of that approving authority, then we would want it either, and again, either of these are possible, and again, any of these are possible. We would want to either have it be, there are terms of reference for council members, participation, starting to become a council committee. We need to identify which council members would be appointed to that committee. Or alternatively, we could have a council member participate in the administrative committee, which starts to get a little bit awkward because when you start to mix elected officials and administrative folks, who's really calling the shots there, and starts to blur the lines. Administration did include alternative. The second bullet point in alternatives that council directed administration update the policy to reflect the participation of municipal elected officials in the fund. My recommendation would be, if council is interested in doing that, would be that administration could bring funding recommendations to committee of the whole on a regular basis. Committee of the whole could recommend and forward to council. We could sort of lean out the amount of time things would take. We just said, okay, well, let's start to bring recommendations straight to council, skip committee. So we're involving the elected officials, but we're not running a regular committee and council approval process. So administration really is happy to work under any of these approaches. But you can see how it could start to become a little bit more cumbersome if we're going through, and the intention here was to be able to act quickly, while providing that transparency through regular reporting to council about how funds were approved and put out into the community.
Councillor Calvin.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, administration. So we developed this policy because we were using $10,000 of the taxpayers' money to distribute. So now we want to change this policy because we have outside funders that may want to come in. Why would we just not create a different policy so that the $10,000 is what we've done all along? We have all these outside funders that want to fund. Why wouldn't we just create a different policy than trying to blend two? I'm just curious.
Thank you, Your Worship, for Councillor Gallagher. I think, again, this is a demonstration of administration wanting to be quick. Policy development can take some time, starting from scratch. There'd be consultation with the different funders about what their needs were. Reasonably, council would want to have a fairly significant level of input. You might ask questions about how, so this was really an attempt to use an existing policy and procedure that, as was mentioned in the report, has worked, I think, quite successfully, where council has already had significant involvement. So this is an attempt from the administration to say, let's act quickly rather than starting from scratch when we already have something that works.
So then the 10,000 from council would just get blended, or those applications would come back to council, or we would just see that on a monthly basis?
We would see, and I don't know the status of the $10,000 for 2024, but I don't suspect there's a significant amount of that. I think our previous cycles use a fair bit of that. Well, Director Reed or Mr. Dell can correct me on that. But for 2025, let's say, the municipality would have our $10,000 and any other funds that would come in. And again, the external funders may have some additional sort of areas that they'd like to target. All of the funds, whatever their source, would follow the same reporting structure, back to council after they've been awarded. So it would be informing council, not seeking council approval. The reference to $10,000 in the policy is to ensure that the public and council can know that there is no additional municipal tax support being provided.
How urgent is the decision? We are in abnormal times. We have consciously made an effort to convert every meeting to a regular council meeting so we can make decisions, and we've lost the opportunity for community of the whole as a result. This comes to council and to the community with limited notice, given the state we're in. Is there any requirement from administration's perspective of the decision today?
Your worship, through the council, of course, we will defer to council's wishes. Yes, we brought it forward because the need is current and high. So we would very much like to be able to activate using, again, the not reinventing the wheel. This policy works very well, and now it has basically been given the ability to work for any funder that arrives. And so, yes, we would ask for council's speed if we could. But if we haven't answered your questions, then we will go back and bring it to you again. We do believe that the policy is strong and this will result in on the ground changes in our community. So we are championing at the bit to get going with these partners.
Councillor Keller.
Sorry, just have one more question. Thank you, Mayor Ireland. So if we were going to allow donors to be part of the process for their program, should we not have that within the policy where it's written? I don't see that where, we add that donors would be part of the decision making and the donation that if they require to, should that not be part of the policy?
Mayor Ireland, through Councillor Keller, I actually think that's another good amendment to the policy in the sense that it would be very straightforward to say funders have the ability to contribute to the decision-making process. We, in our administrative process, we already do that. Again, remember that the outreach team especially, or CD as a whole, community development, we already deal with a myriad of funders and a number of funders, and we already sort of take their objectives with their money and we meet those objectives. So we're already very skilled at doing exactly this. And so not writing it in is only because it's exactly how we always operate, but we meet the needs of the funder. But we could, I think, add one sentence that would say funders, and to be clear, the municipality is also a funder. And so this would apply to you then. Your 10,000, you could say, we want direct control of our 10,000. And so the idea that the funder gets to contribute to where the money, what projects the money is supported, is exactly how we operate already. But we could add that sentence in.
Thank you.
If I may supplement, Mr. Dell, of course, points out too, that none of this funding happens without a funding agreement. And so the funding agreement is where those things get fleshed out. All the other funders that we do, it's not that we just do it sort of as business practice. We do it because it is part of, in essence, the contract with each funder that we go with. So it would definitely be there.
Director, to the extent that an external funder could put conditions on expenditures, those conditions would still have to be in alignment with our principles and policies and the eligibility requirements that we have in terms of inclusivity, diversity, and equality, and things of that nature. Right? We could not accept funds, would not accept funds from a funder who wanted to spend them on, or us to spend them on, for purposes for which we are not aligned.
Your worship, you're absolutely correct. That is exactly part of the strength of this policy, is that we don't go down avenues that don't meet the community's needs and goals and expectations and standards. And the ED&I policy is a good example of that. 100%, that's the correct interpretation. It is also a strength of the way we're doing this, in the sense that it tells funders, if you want to play in our community, if you want to help us to recover and rebuild whatever from the current situation or the future, then you will come knowing that that's the parameters and guardrails of participating in this community. So it is one of the strengths that we're trying to bring forward as we meet these funders, yes.
Would the council benefit from a short recess to ponder whether there might be a motion? I see one head nodding. It is 10:47. I will call a recess to allow council to consider a motion that might be forthcoming based on this request for decision. Let's reconvene at 11 with 13 minutes to sort it out. Until then, we will be in recess. It is 11:01. I will follow back into open session. Councillors have had an opportunity to consider a motion, but before I look to any councillor to make a motion, I just wanted to confirm with Director Reed or Ms. Riddell or Mr. Gibbon. Is he ready? What would be the process now if community development was to receive funding from an external source with a request that those funds be distributed through community development specifically?
Your worship, I can speak to this to start, and if Mr. Dell wants to add on supplement, but in short, we do this on the regular. We have sort of partners and contracts with those partners that determine deliverables, and so in essence, that is the policy that guides us in how to spend. And so Rural Development Network, Family Resource Network, those are two provincial funds that we already do this exact setup. We have clarity, guardrails, and we spend the money to support the initiatives that the organization wants to see us support. Did I answer that question? And does Ms. Riddell want to add anything?
Thanks for the question. The only thing I would add is if we were approached to help give money out in a certain way, we would do an evaluation of our existing scope, our authority, and our capacity. And with an existing funder or a new funder, for example, we might say, okay, this is what that funder is interested in doing. Do we have the administrative systems in place to be able to do that well? And if not, we would be negotiating with that external funder for some full-time equivalency or some FTE time to be able to also pay someone to be able to administer the process that goes with that money. And so how that relates to this is what we see with the Community and Economic Development Fund is an existing administrative process that's already funded, that's already in place. And we see potential for that process to help us take the external funding from the funder and get it 100% wholly into the hands of the organizations that can help in the community, rather than creating another process. Because it is worth noting that when there's an external funder that has a project and they want to work with the municipality to deliver the project in community, there's always an administrative component. We would negotiate with that funder to figure out what a cost could be associated with that and whether they were ready to fund that as well.
Thank you both for that. I think one of the challenges that we face this side of the table is that we don't have a sense of scale. And so capacity is an issue. And we don't know how much upscale there will be. If we pass this and it is in the community, I cannot imagine the number of individuals, businesses, and organizations which will be applying. And yet we have no idea how much money we're talking about. Do we have capacity in-house to deal with that? We know now that there is a process, there is a policy that you referenced. If you get external funding, you follow the policy and you get it out the door. It's challenging to understand why we need to convert an existing policy if there is existing policy that can deal with this. Again, it comes back to a question of scale. Is the anticipation that there is such a large volume of money potentially to come through the door that we need a new policy? This is very challenging for council in the absence of those sorts of details. And I appreciate that you can't know what the external funders are going to come up with, but are we anywhere close to having capacity? Capacity to deal with $10,000 on an annual basis is considerably different than capacity to deal with. We have no idea how much money might come in the door. Can we manage this?
Your worship, again, I'll start and perhaps Mr. Dell can supplement. Some of this is remembering that we want this policy to last beyond this event. And we do believe that the capacity it takes to administer, because one of the key differences here, we're not necessarily talking about money the municipality will take and act on. We're talking about money that community groups will take and act on. So that is, we don't have the need for the capacity to actually do the thing that will be supported. What we are doing is contributing the administrative support that, yes, we believe we already do have, because we're not going to be doing the action of the things that get supported necessarily. And so we believe that the support needed is administrative, and we have that in place. It is, of course, if we were to be overwhelmed, we would then have to solve that problem. And that might mean we come back to council and say, yeah, it turns out we were overwhelmed with this idea that we felt was straightforward. And so we need some additional support to do that. Or we go to the partners and say, partners, turns out that this is more administration than we were prepared for, and it requires some support. And the partners would say, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. As Mr. Bell alluded to, that does happen with our other funders. Mr. Bell, do you want to add?
Yeah, thanks. I do really appreciate the question through Mayor Ireland to all of council. I think it's worth just explaining some of the background. So we've been meeting together with Banff Canmore Foundation, Community Team Society, Red Cross since mid-September. And it's been part of the discussion to think about, okay, let's think about the workflow. How does this happen? How do we make sure this is within our capacity? We looked at responses that some of those organizations, not the Community Team Society, but Banff Canmore and the Red Cross were both involved in several other responses. And we looked specifically at the COVID-19 response down in the Bow Valley that Banff Canmore was heavily involved in. We also looked at the response to the Canmore floods. And I can tell you that our guess, based on some of that, is that we anticipate that we will want to move the intake to be more frequent at first. We're looking at monthly, and then we think that we're going to be able to get the funding out to the bulk of community groups at the outset, and then we're going to see a leveling off of requests. And so internally, I did a look for myself and my team of like, are we able to pivot and just put attention towards this for a few months? Are we able to just receive as many applications as possible and fund as many groups as we can for the initial rush? And then, you know, thinking that it's going to level off. And we have looked at that and thought about that. And part of the work in community development does involve switching from file to file, depending on the needs, depending on the demand and what's going on in community. So we are used to this type of work. We have looked at that and done a bit of an internal capacity assessment. And we've looked at what has been the case in other communities after other disaster situations. The policy changes, so the policy as it was would have worked, but we did identify that needing to bring every single request to council was going to slow things down. And that was what informed the proposed change, that we simply have a selection, you know, group, and that we issue the funding and we simply report to council. So that does allow us to have more capacity to receive more applications, issue more funding. The other really core thing with the policy was under Section 3 in standards. We do need to add that the CED fund may also award additional funds provided by external sources. And that's for the time being now, but also because we see a future where maybe we can get some grant money and funnel it through this. And so at its core, those were some of the basic updates to the policy that allow our capacity to grow and allow it to work with external dollars. And I hope that answers the question about, you know, our internal abilities to carry this out.
If I may supplement, your worship, also the partner agencies that were, the larger partner agencies that we have spoken of, Banff Canmore, Red Cross, they come also with administration. So they are also part of the support for their funds getting out into the community. So it's not just a Jasper show, it's a Jasper and partner show. And so that administrative support should also be factored into consideration of how does this work? It works like that in partnership.
Thank you both for indulging. Councillor Telegram.
Thank you, Mayor, and I have a motion that we leave our current economic development policy as is, and administration brings us back a new private recovery economic development policy to a future meeting. And the reason I'm saying this is because $10,000 that we currently have is taxpayers' money, and I think we should leave that as is. Then if you bring back a policy next week based on the criteria of our economic development policy, and then in there, you know, we're showing that it's hard money, donors are coming in, and in that policy that we could say that if we don't have capacity to, in administration for this program, that they may contribute for that. But then it allows both programs to work.
So just before I turn to Deputy Mayor, more for a question, can you repeat the motion to me?
We, the current economic development policy funding as is, and administration respecting new one-eyed recovery economic development policy to a future meeting. Or we change the name.
I think you said.
I'm sorry, Laura. Laura,
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
I apologize, but I could only hear the very beginning of the motion. And so in order to understand, I'd like to hear the whole thing.
The current economic development policy as is, and administration brings back a new wildfire recovery economic development policy to a future meeting.
Councillor Waxer, did you hear that motion?
I did hear it this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor DeMora.
Not to debate, just for clarity at this point. So you're just asking pretty much, carbon copy this, but make it, relatable to, wildfire recovery funding that would be coming in separate of this particular policy. It's almost like a mere policy, but more specific, or specifically to external funding coming in and the use of that in our community, specifically to relief. Okay. And I'm just wondering if that came through you, if that's something that seems like a workable week turnaround for next Tuesday.
Your worship, on Director Reed's behalf, I'm not gonna commit the team to turning around in a week. We are in a short week, and this is the challenge of turning things around. I think we previously discussed that for new items coming to the council table, we sort of talked about what that standard looks like. We'll endeavor to turn perhaps quick as well. I think we've also got our organizational meeting is next week. So that's something that's on administration's mind. I think it most likely be the week after that.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to consider.
Sorry, Your Worship, to interrupt, and just reminding you that the week after that is actually the 5th. Please refer, there's no council meeting, and so it would be in November that would come back.
I just want to be clear before I call a question. I think you said return with a wildfire recovery economic development policy that you would include, I think, community and economic. That's right. Development policy, but the intent of the motion is to separate the current existing taxpayer funded policy, the community economic development fund policy, which is the $10,000 from taxpayers, separate that from funding from external sources. Along the lines of what was presented today, maybe with some suggested changes, to bring that back as a standalone policy. That's correct. Thank you. Is there any debate on that policy? Councillor Waxer, go ahead.
I guess one of my, I have some concerns about that, I guess that from my perspective, I think we as council have invested significant time and energy in ensuring that that money would be distributed to groups based on our strategic priorities and our equity and inclusion policies. I think that we need to have more trust in the administrative policy procedures, and that there are significant, robust administrative policies in place. And in this circumstance, I believe that there is a need to be nimble and to ensure that funding gets out and is spent on helping the community recover. I think also this will not be the only way that money is distributed in the community. I think there'll be multiple streams coming from it that will fit under other circumstances. So from my perspective, while I had some questions, I feel that it's really critical that we're nimble at this point and that we have, and I also would speak to the fact that I think it's in a credit to us that the Canadian Red Cross, the Banff Canmore Foundation and the Jasper Community Team have such faith in our existing system that they're willing to place their funds in the hands of our organization and to distribute them in a way that they believe will be in the best interest of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Lasser. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Well, I will speak to it. I will support the motion. It is an unusual circumstance indeed, but up until now, council itself considered and approved applications to the Community and Economic Development Fund, which totaled only $10,000. Now we're talking about perhaps 10 times that amount, potentially 100 times that amount, and council is being removed from the process. And yet it's going to be channeled through the community. That might be, as Councillor Waxer says, a display that we can be nimble, but it certainly changes council's involvement. We haven't involved at the $10,000 limit, making decisions, right? I don't see why we would walk away from that. This is a new prospective amount of money. Perhaps it's appropriate to deal with it differently, but I agree with Councillor Keller that we should not confuse the two. Council has an obligation with respect to taxpayer-funded support of groups. This is different. This is not taxpayer-funded. People have donated money. It can be dealt with differently, but I am fretful over combining the two and then removing council's oversight of the minimal amount of taxpayer dollars that we distribute. So I will support the motion. Deputy Mayor DeMora?
Still kind of having trouble with this one, for the simple fact that when we're in the process of encouraging people to donate to a specific area, whether it's the Caring Community Fund or Red Cross, and now we're having, those organizations having to come back in different capacity, like how were we expecting funding to go out in the first place with that vast amount of money? And now we're talking about organizations that want to come to council for certain things. To me, it creates a little bit more confusion on where people need to go and what they need to do. And I would like to see something a little bit, maybe this was the way to streamline. I'm not sure with either motion today if I'm ready to vote in favor of something that still causes confusion. There's a lot of money, like the mayor said, that's involved here, and I think I felt up until this point that I was comfortable with a decision either way. I wanted to at least take a peek to approve something here. And secondly, regardless of how this goes and whatever policy gets developed, I think that we should put back in the disqualifiers or ineligibility for having specific faith-based funding for whatever function. We've lost 2 buildings that have specific congregations that go to it. And I think within our community right now, we need to totally putting politics aside, we need to put our faith, belief specific faith beliefs, because people are going to need, who went to those places, need other places to go, and I'm sure they're already going to whomever's providing faith-based services in the community. So I think this is just a way of promoting more unity within there, and I think that should still be, that's all I keep.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, your worship. I will speak in favor of the motion, and, this motion does allow the opportunity to separate tax dollars from contributed dollars. The other thing, it does not restrict the Red Cross or any other organization from only coming to council. They can, if they choose, go to other organizations and make contributions as well. This is just another outlet for them. When the new policy is developed, but it does make it much cleaner as to, the way administration can assist the other organizations, and not, spending, like I say, tax dollars, but helping to have organizations distribute dollars if they choose to use municipal administration through the policy.
Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor, and I support the motion. I'm just concerned that this will, like, waiting on this new policy will it tie money up and will money not be distributed because we're waiting for this new policy to come back, or maybe, I know I'm not supposed to ask questions of them right now, but that's my only thought, is that it will tie things up while we wait for a new policy to come back to us.
Your worship, with the direction proposed in the policy, nothing will change. If anybody, if there's a funder that wanted to provide funds in the community, they can still deal with community groups individually and directly. So nothing will change. And community organizations can find those funders however they would find them. And those funders can connect with community organizations however they connect with them. So as things are happening yesterday, they would just continue that way until some policy revision is approved by council.
We have already broken process by inviting administration into debate. Now I will break again, speaking twice in the same motion, but my understanding from the previous question was that external funders can still give money to the municipality. It just wouldn't be distributed through the economic and community and economic development fund, but it could still be received and distributed, and it seems to be what has happened in the past. So if we make this matter, I don't see that changes the fact that external funders can find other avenues to disperse funds to people, or they can give it to community development through funds other than the economic community development fund. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak to the motion? Not Councillor Kelleranti, do you wish to close debate? All right, if everyone remembers the motion, it was that the existing community and economic development fund policy be left as is, and that administration return to council with a specific policy regarding wildfire recovery, community and economic development policy. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried, 2 opposed. Thank you for that. That takes us to agenda item 6.3, Activity Center renovation update.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Yes, before you, you have a recommendation from Council to accept this update on the Jasper Activity Center renovation project for information. Of course, alternatively, Council can direct the administrator in turn with additional information. I won't go too far into the background. This paragraph hasn't changed in several reports. But we're working through the final phases of our $20 million renovation project. In the discussion, the Jasper Activity Center renovation has faced delays primarily due to the impact of the wildfire, which resulted in community-wide evacuations, significant fire remediation work before construction could fully resume. Key project milestones were pushed back, and additional scope items, including the fire alarm system upgrade, have compounded the delays. Construction work was initially scheduled to achieve substantial completion in July 2024, but the wildfire-related interruptions, including the need for cleaning, reoccupying areas affected by fire contamination, have shifted this to December of 2024. The primary reason for the project delay stems from the evacuation and subsequent site remediation, as mentioned. Administration is working with Carlson, of course, and the insurer to provide site restoration company to ensure that key areas such as the Aquatic Center Arena are open in phases as soon as possible. And I will direct your attention to the, I'm sorry, I'll stop at financial. The current budget remains within approved limits, forecasted cost of $20,378,245, representing a minor variance of $186,305. Remediation costs for the fire panel and related devices will be recovered by the insurer. But I'll direct you to all of our schedule moments. So the exterior and civil work, so you'll see they're all in red. You may remember that this chart used to show greens and yellows and reds. Greens were things that were on track or completed, yellows were things that needed attention, and red were things that were all behind or delayed or what have you. So everything is now in red. And we are still using quarters monikers. So the exterior and civil work, so the finish of the landscape and some of the concrete won't happen until the spring of 2025. The arena work should be finished in this quarter of 2024. Aquatic Center, the same thing. The Activity Center elevator, so you see everything is Q4 of 2024. You know, as the information changes, we can give more clarity on what part of Q4. For example, the scaffolding at the pool has begun to be taken down this morning. So that means in about a week, we will know whether or not there has been any damage caused by that scaffolding, which would delay the pool's opening. If there is no damage to the pool, then we're on a 2 to 3 week finish of the work we have to do to get that pool open again. You may remember the pool was full of water. It was approved for opening. We were going to open July 31st. And so this setback, of course, how we have to start everything fresh. But the scaffolding is coming down. The space has been remediated. These are great moves forward. And so next week we'll have more information that says if there's no damage to the basin, we are on a 2 to 3 week opening of the pool. If there's damage to the basin, I couldn't hazard a guess yet. The same stands true for the arena. We have our boards contractor in there right now, and Carlson as well, finishing off their final bits and getting out of the arena so we can make ice. And so that next week I would have a better, more accurate date of, you know, is it 3 weeks or is it 6 weeks? But we don't have that yet. Curling, the same thing. What we are expecting to be able to do based on some of the contract elements that have to be completed and inspections this week is that the ice plant will be able to make ice in curling before we make ice in the arena, which we didn't used to have the capacity of, but the new ice plant gives us that capacity to make ice separately on those 2 floors, if you will. But I don't have that until this week and we get the inspections approved. And so, as with the wildfire, things change pretty regularly and quickly. And so we're in that same phase right now. As we expose more things, we get good news or we could conceivably get bad news. But we are very optimistic that even though everything's in red, we will see things open up as quickly as possible. And we will need the Q4 of 2024 target dates for all of these things. I will give credit to Carlson. All this red sort of makes Carlson look like some sort of bad guy. They are not. They are doing great work. as is the remediation companies that we've had, but Carlson has really stepped up, and I wanna address that. All the red makes it look really bad, but Carlson has really come back in full force. Some of their trades are working 7 days, some of their trades are planning to work 24 hours in cycle shifts, so they're really coming back with full force, and I give them credit for that. And of course, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Director Reed, for that, update. Councillor Delagranthi, and then Deputy Mayor Demore.
Thank you, Mayor, I'll introduce Director Reed. The arena boards, that are being replaced, so they have their warranty, because they were part of, the earlier upgrade, correct?
So they were part of the earlier upgrade prior to the renovation contract, so their warranty period has completed. They are not under warranty. And the work that we are getting done is really just to bring them up to what we would call the appropriate standard for our uses. The kind of tournaments that we bring in and the kind of special events that we bring in. So it is, that contract is complete, there's no warranty left to have. I'm really looking forward to this final finish of that board's project, really.
Okay, thank you for that.
Deputy Mayor Demore.
Having said that, your worship, through you to, Director Reed, when you say, the boards for our specific uses and events that we might hold here, are we able to host higher caliber, hockey as in professional with our upgrades or races?
Your worship, through the Councillor Demore, that's the whole purpose of this sort of additional renovation to that project, is to be able to say, yes, this is at the standard for semi-pro or pro.
That wasn't my question, just because you wanted to continue on. I got you. All right. My question is, I know that the multipurpose hall has been used for various purposes over the extent since our evacuation and recovery process. Do we have an idea of when we could potentially be hosting community dinners? I know that I alluded to that earlier, and being out in the community, I can't speak for other councillors, but people have been asking me and saying that events that they've been to that we need a little bit more of that, I get asked what those are happening.
Deputy Mayor Demore, another great question. I'm happy to say that, yes, with the JRCC moving into the provincial building, we've got a multi-purpose hall back. Targeted for the end of October that we would have multi-purpose hall back. So early November, we could be running community dinners again in that space. This community dinner tomorrow that is sponsored by TGP is in the curling rink. While we still have that floor, which hopefully will start to make ice right away, so we won't be able to do another community dinner on the curling rink floor because it will be ice. But your question is, yes, we will be getting the multi-purpose hall back. We could put it as a flag also. It would be red right now because it's got the JRCC in there, but it is fully cleaned and remediated, and we can't wait to get back in there. Hopefully early November at least.
All right, it's good news. Other councillors? Go ahead, Councillor Mallon.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Demore. It sounds like good news that, the, daycare detour, will be coming down soon, where the, individuals, will they be able to enter from both sides of the activity center, towards the, daycare, or will they be only be able to enter from, I'll call it the north side?
So the plan for the Wildflowers childcare access involves a hoarding fence while they finish off the roofing work there and the final work on the walls. And so only half or a portion of Wildflowers will be able to enter through what we would maybe call the main entrance or the west entrance. So some Wildflowers will still be entering, and our school care will still be entering through what we call Commemoration Park entrance or the east entrance. So for a period, we will have wildflowers coming both ways, or children coming through both ways, and families. And then, once that roofing work is done in the next several weeks, then wildflowers and our main entrance will reopen, probably wildflowers first, then the main entrance.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Mallon. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Moda. Great news about the boards and being able to host higher caliber events. Can we anticipate being open longer and bringing back all those tournaments this spring? And I know it's all based on required need, want, I guess, but I think that'd be really amazing to be advertising that we can do that, and we bring back some hockey camps in the summer, et cetera, et cetera.
So Deputy Mayor Demona through to Councillor Hall, yes, and yes, and yes. And our newly hired ice booking agent, Brian Ewald, he's gung ho to make new and inventive things happen. So we are working hard to give him the capacity that he needs to reach out and make some of those things happen. All of it depends on who asks and what they're willing to sign up for, commit to. So yes, we're open to it. We have the capacity to make ice more efficiently than ever before. And so yes, we want to be open more than ever before. We did not get any applicants for one of our ice positions, so we're still what we would call short-staffed. But we're gonna see multiple ways of attacking that problem through the next few months.
All right, thank you very much. Questions? All right, doesn't appear to be any further questioning on that, receipt for information. Do I have a councillor who wishes to make a motion to receive the Canadian Economic Development Fund policy review for information?
No, but I would make the motion that council accept this update on the Jasper Activity Center.
Oh, sorry. I got my thumb on the wrong side. Thank you for being a student there. Just reading on cruise controls. Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. Your worship, if you're back in, we're at 6.4 now, the Jasper Foodbank. I don't know if this is speaking to that.
Director Reed. Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome back, Council. So the item that I'm about to present for you is just a request for, the recommendation is that Council direct administration to work with Foodbanks Alberta to identify a temporary site and assist them in relocating a site for the Jasper Food Bank. The background is, of course, the Jasper Food Bank was, as we all know, housed in the Anglican Church, which we lost. And the Jasper Legion stepped in to open up one of their rooms. That room is no longer available to the food bank and is really a bit small and not quite sufficient for their needs. So Foodbanks Alberta has a trailer set up that they are prepared to assist Jasper with, so that we can have a more functional and permanent food bank location. The discussion is right now to have it next to the museum in the what we call the recreation facilities parking lot. And we believe it's a win-win on all sort of sides of this question. But that's, to be determined with, will utilities, like ATCO be able to service it there and things like that. So what I'm asking for is, again, a recommendation that council direct administration to work with Foodbanks Alberta to identify a temporary site, for a Jasper food bank. And the reason that I'm asking for that is so that I can go forward in the same way we did with the men's shed and be able to provide them certainty of what we can offer, and then council will see the results in the end. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Director Reed. Any other questions? Councillor Mellon?
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we need a motion to be made by a councillor?
We will.
Do you want the motion now for discussion, or should we wait if there's any other questions?
Or to have questions first and then we can have a motion? Okay. If there are no questions for Director Reed. I see no hands. A motion would be in order.
And I'd be happy to make that motion as stated by Director Reed. So that we don't miss any of the fine points that were mentioned in the motion.
This April, you have that motion fully recorded. I'm trying to repeat it either. Enter into discussion with Foodbank. So, all right, is there any debate on the motion? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you for that. Director Reed, that takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion. We have none, which takes us to agenda item 8. Councillor reports. Reports. Councillors. Deputy Mayor DeVore.
I know I've been accused in the past of working in roundtable discussion to different line items within the agenda. However, I just wanted to make an observation just because of, kind of a loose appointment that you have as deputy mayors to go in and sign checks in the municipal office. And one thing that I've been noticing is constant phone ringing and questions coming in to our staff there. The questions that are readily available on our website, whether it's information about building permitting and other information that's available on there. I'm just wondering if anybody has an idea of how to better communicate to the broader public, understanding that not everybody's internet savvy or tablet savvy or phone savvy. But I think that there's a gap, and just from the little time that I'm there, I asked if this is a daily occurrence, and it's ongoing all day. So for me, I think what I've heard a lot of the information being iterated back and getting people to direct to specific spots on the website. When I've gone through it myself, on the phone, I find it a little bit more challenging sometimes to get to the spots that I've gone to, but when I'm on a dedicated laptop or a desktop device, I find it a little bit easier to maneuver. So I don't know if that's where the communication issues are. However, I would like to find a way to really get people when they need to ask questions, to go to the website to see if they can get the information there first. And it's not that I don't think that our staff should be providing the service anyway. I mean, it's good that they're there to do that, but I think, there might be an opportunity to maybe enhance, the encouragement or advertising and getting people there. I don't know how to do that, and, I know that's something else for administration to think about. However, I said that I bring it forward for discussion today, or just putting it as a topic of conversation for something to think about.
Thank you. Response, any other reports from councillors? Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I was in Edmonton on Thursday at the Northern Action meeting, and councillors recognized Robin's work during the wildfire, and especially the Evergreens Foundation. Also, the government is looking at a high level for hydro, and will be coming out in 2025 for with that project. Friday, I attended through Zoom, because kind of the other hand highways issue.
Thank you for that. Other reports? I will report briefly then that Wednesday of last week, I too met with CBS, whoever they are. And they are doing more of a documentary piece, I'm not sure when it will be aired, about the Jasper wildfire and recovery therefrom. And on Thursday, I spent much of the day with Minister Wassano, attending for a media event at Market Basin. We also toured parts of the devastation both in town and in the surrounding area. And then I was joined by councillors Wilson, Demota and Councillor Melnick for dinner with Minister Bolsno on that evening. And of course, we got the announcement that day of the rent relief, which will be applied both to the municipality and to outlying commercial properties and some residential properties. So that was welcome news indeed. That is one update. If there are no other updates, we can move to agenda item 9, upcoming events. Tomorrow, there's a return of NETNA at the Marine Range at 5 p.m. The Jasper Dark Sky Festival is scheduled October 18th through 26th, in whatever form it takes this year. Not on there, but this coming weekend on the Sunday evening, which is about the 20th, there is an opportunity for residents, if they've got their tickets booked, to go to Jasper Park Lodge and to enjoy the Symphony Under the Stars, and that is a treat from Travel Alberta and Fairmont. So an opportunity for residents to come together under the stars at one of our local properties and enjoy some music. The annual organizational meeting is Tuesday next week. I think I am still waiting for preferred committee assignments from 2 councillors. And no stone left alone, Monday, November 4th, which we're going to stay on the 11th. Are there any other upcoming events which should be brought to the attention of council? If there are not, it would be in order to make a motion to adjourn. Councillor Keller-Randy, a motion to adjourn at 11:51 a.m. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you all. Those who stuck it out in the boardroom room, those online are those who watch our YouTube platform later. Thank you, Councillor Boxer. Enjoy the rest of your day in Prince Edward Island. Is that where you are now?
I'm currently in City Hall in Charlottetown in their boardroom.
Cool.
Right. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all. That's cool. Good day.